you, everyone who's here. Hi, welcome. Nice to see some familiar faces, some new faces. We're really happy that you're here with us and honored to be able to have this space and time together to connect and reflect and share on this wild year. My name is Emily Goodman. I'm a senior advisor with Collective Mind, and I'm going to give a bit of an introduction, and then we'll do our kind of go around group intros and get into our discussion. So for those who are new to us, Collective Mind, we can go to the next slide, sorry. For those who are new to us, Collective Mind believes in the power of networks to foster collective action. And we work with networks and with network managers and practitioners to help them be effective and impactful. We do this in a couple of ways, and this event is one example as part of our learning community, where we host regular interactive online events for network professionals that are geared toward learning new skills, engaging in new ideas, digging into those unique challenges that networks face, and really focusing on the practical and applied experience of working with networks. We also work directly with networks and their staff as strategic advisors, providing everything from targeted projects and deliverables like designing governance structures and network assessments to bigger projects like network design, diagnostic services, and strategic planning. And we also work with networks as teams to provide trainings and custom capacity building programs for network staff, for boards, for members, on a variety of different topics. So that's just a little bit of a background on who Collective Mind is. And we can go to the next slide. Today, we're here to open up a space for you all to just talk about what it's been like for networks and for you as network managers during this global pandemic, the challenges of this year and what it's really meant for networks. The community that Collective Mind has brought together to support network practitioners is a really unique space, because we all have our different professional circles and technical fields that we operate in. But what's special and I think important about this space is that you all have very specific experiences in common, which is the different hats that you wear when you work with a network and the different nuances that make networks really exciting and challenging. So typically our approach to these conversations is that they are co-hosted by a member of our learning community, and there's usually a brief presentation on a specific topic and then goes into Q&A. But for this conversation, it's going to be a little bit different. There's no host, there's no presentation. This is really about who's in the room right now. Everyone here is an expert on their own experience and has been working this last year to support a network during a pandemic. So there's lots of things we can learn from each other. And our agenda for today is simply to share and acknowledge these shared experiences, to listen, discuss, and support each other, to share ideas, give each other new insights and ideas, and and this conversation will be pretty unstructured, and we hope useful and insightful for you. I see that there's, okay, let's see what's on that. So Seema, if we can go to the next slide, we're going to start with introductions around the room, as it were. And what we would love is if you could share your name, where in the world you're joining from, your network's name, and briefly the topic that you work on, and one word that captures your experience in managing the network this year. So we'll put that in, we'll copy that into the chat, and then we will turn off the slides so that we can all see each other. What I'm gonna do is, just ask someone to start, and then whoever is speaking can just call on the next person. And we have a nice small group here, so we can really dig into some stuff. So Rose, would you mind kicking us off, please?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I am Rose. I live in Northern Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. I lead a network called the Society Civic Science Initiative, and this is a group of professional associations and science societies who are working together to support their members, the scientists who do public and civic engagement. The one word I didn't quite get to think through yet. I think I would go with agile. At least that's what I'm trying for.
Thank you. And you can call in.
Thanks, Rose. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren. I am coming to you from Gadigal Lands in Sydney, Australia. I came to know about this network through a newsletter I got from Network Weaver, so it's really lovely to be here. My network's name, I've got two going at the moment. We're looking at systemic impact in the end-of-life system in Australia, and the home and housing system in South Australia is the second one. And they both exist to find leverage points in the system so that they can make social impact in those spaces. One word that captures the experience we've had this year is similar to agile, but also like emergent as well. It does the changing nature of the world globally and the impacts. It's created quite an emergent space, I feel. I'll pass on to Tim.
Hi, my name is Tim Neubauer. So it's my first time here, but I did get also, as you just said, Lauren, through Network Weaver was the information that I got through them. So I live in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I work for the Canadian Mental Health Association here. We're a national organization, but in particular, like the province that I live in, so we're part of a rural mental health network and overseeing just, how do we connect 150 rural communities in our province around mental health. And so it's been quite, this isn't my word, it's been definitely quite interesting and challenging, but the word is, I would say, adaptive. There's been a lot of adaptation in the last 8 months here for sure. And so I'm just gonna see, I noticed somebody was, Kirsten, I think you're the only one left on my screen maybe. I don't know who else is part of the team, so.
Yeah, so Kirsten and Seema are both colleagues of mine, but I'd love for you both to be able to introduce yourselves and share your word as well.
Hi, yeah, good to be here. Sorry I don't have my video on today, but I'm Kirsten. I'm the founder of Collective Mind, and I was just thinking about my word. I think my word would be intentional. And I think that that word comes to mind because I think under these circumstances, for very many reasons, I think we have to be more intentional about how we interact, about what our expectations are, our assumptions in our interactions. I think it's a time that requires maybe another word with it would be attention. I think we just, both with each other in our relationships and our interactions, our communications, I think in what we want to achieve, it all just requires maybe a higher level or deeper level, whichever way you want to look at it, deeper level perhaps of intention and attention. So maybe 2 words, sorry.
I can go next. Seema Patel, also with Collective Mind. I would say my word would be resilient, but it's very much in the same thread as sort of what others have said. I think with emergent and adaptive and intentional, like Kirsten was mentioning, I think that resilience is something that I think many people have, but this year has certainly brought to the surface our ability to channel that resilience and have it yield some really maybe surprising results, but definitely some needed ones. And I think that's very true, I think, of our interactions with our network colleagues and community. And we've been really, you know, I wouldn't say surprised, but I'll say it for the sake of the analogy, pleasantly surprised that that has indeed been the case, that network colleagues have been so adaptive and resilient in the face of very challenging times. And it's been really great to be able to support them in that journey and that process, and for us as Collective Mind to be doing that as well. So I'd say that's probably the word that sums it up best for me.
Thanks, Seema. Thank you, everyone. I realize it's highly unfair for me to make you all come up with words and me not make myself come up with a word as well. So I'll accept the challenge as well. You know, we hosted another one of these sessions earlier this morning, just to make the session accessible for people in different time zones and different schedules. So we had a couple more people this morning, so this is a more intimate group now. But one of the participants this morning said a word that spoke to me, which was balance. Balance has been kind of a centerpiece of this year, I think, and that resonates for me on a professional level, personal level, and of course how those all interact. So I'm going to say balance. So now we're just going to open the floor. We can keep our cameras on, mics on, and really just have this be an interactive conversation. You can feel free to pose your own questions, thoughts, ideas to the group, any topics that you want maybe feedback on. I'm here to, light facilitate, and I also have some prompts that we can, reflect on as we go if it helps to move the conversation along. But really, we are here with you, and really eager to hear what comes up. Maybe to kick it off, just again framing it as if there are any particular challenges or topics that you'd like to share or discuss, things that you were thinking about as you were coming into this conversation that spoke to you as to why you wanted to be here today.
I can share one thing that I've been working through. The network that I lead, really, we kind of launched last summer, but in some ways a lot of the first 6 months were foundation laying and understanding the landscape. And so we really kind of launched some of our projects at the end of January. So that was not great timing for, all the chaos that would come shortly after. And I think one struggle with the group that I work with is that network thinking and sort of habits are not familiar. They're very organizational mindsets. And so and I'm bringing that up as just sort of general context, but then I think that the pandemic supercharged that and made us crawl back into what's familiar. And so in some ways, the organizational mindsets got even more rigid. I think part of that is that they were facing new challenges in their organizations. So, conferences are a big thing that they all do. And of course, those either got canceled or now they're learning all these new skills and tools for online. So, yeah, I've struggled a lot to kind of encourage people to lean into working together and giving and taking and thinking outside of the exact things that are in your job description or in your organization's strategic plan. And I think it would have been hard anyway, but it seems like it's especially hard right now. And so, where that's gone is that I've actually ended up taking on a little bit more, we've been doing less, but I'm doing more of the projects we're doing. So, leaning into things where my skill set is most useful, and then other things that were intended to be more collaborative have sort of gotten pushed off. And so it doesn't always feel like a network. I'm trying to make sure the things I'm doing are very responsive to what I understand is going on, certainly sharing out what I'm working on, inviting feedback, which people are happy to do, setting up some occasional calls for people to just basically do something like this. But yeah, anyway, so the sort of work products or the projects we've done end up looking pretty different, and in a way it's less stressful for me. Like trying to herd the cats to collaborate as everything was unfolding was just not sustainable. So anyway, I'm curious if others have had experiences where like collaboration seems less possible for people, and so sort of like other forms of sharing or weaving, you know, have been more useful to you in these times. Sorry, that was kind of all over the place.
I can definitely resonate with your story. I think everything you said just struck a chord. The herding the cats, definitely. Also that. I'm not sure if we have any strategies that work ongoing. And I think similarly, because we've moved to all online Zoom meetings, we've noticed that, you know, while we used to meet in person and the energy sort of coming together, having physical collaboration tools was really, really important for getting work done. Helping people get into the mindset of collaboration online is really challenging. And we've tried a whole different raft of tools. Like the Google Suite has been great, as you probably know, but you know, we always end up doing the work of taking the notes and doing the synthesis, and that's not how we intended to work as a network. And so I can't offer anything in the way of working through it. It's more just like I feel it. It resonates.
Solidarity is great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if I probably won't give any solution here either, other than just add another. I think we're just creating a messier picture that maybe we all need to collaborate on. So our network has been around for a couple of years now. Started very small, so it's, you know, it was 4 or 5 people, and now it's grown to about 75. And they're very much, they have been connected through training at times that was in person, but we had to go all virtual as well. And so now, partly because of COVID, but also they're the distance. I mean, some are very remote rural communities, so they are actually isolated quite a bit from each other just by geography. And so we're trying to figure out so the things that we're trying to figure out, I mean, and they overlap a little bit, is we're trying to figure out how to connect more regional groups that might be able to, at times, it's very different here. Some regions, they can meet in person, others can't. Like, so it's not across the board. In Canada for sure, and where I'm living, it's definitely not the same for everybody as to what they can or can't do. So we're going to have 4 regional meetings on Zoom coming up in the next 2 weeks, where we're connecting people more who have gone through the training already on our network around mental health, building action plans around community mental health. And so connecting them to begin to meet each other, because they've gone through different trainings at different times, like there's been multiple cohorts. So at least now trying to bring them all in the same virtual space to get to know each other, that, wow, I didn't know there's 15 of us within an hour's drive maybe of each other. And trying to get a bit of momentum, I guess, from that, to hopefully get some leadership from those regional groups to begin to self-organize some of the things, so that we're not always the ones facilitating, like as we were when we started the network. So that's kind of a challenge. I think another challenge that we're facing too is that the way it's designed right now, for people to become part of the network and go through the training, there's like small amount of money in training and a year of facilitating some of this in the community. But some people have gone through that funding, and now, so like, why would I still want to be part of a network if I'm not getting paid for my time? And so we're facing some of those challenges. As we look to have more who then maybe doing it off the side of their desk because they're so busy with other things they might be involved with. So I guess our big thing that keeps us up at Wake at Night probably is the self-organizing, but also just the perpetual ongoing nature of the network past probably why people got into it in the first place. So I don't know if that, I know I said I would complicate this even further. So it wasn't an answer for sure for anybody, but it's kind of the space that we're in at the moment, I suppose.
Yeah,
I might jump in. Oh, sorry. Thanks. So just thinking about this is all really resonating with things we heard from colleagues both in the other session we did this morning, and other interactions and engagements we've been doing with other networks in various capacities. And one thing that keeps coming to mind is sort of related to these questions of how you bring people together, how you engage people, etc., is something that came up in this session this morning, and I've heard elsewhere as well, as I said, is this question of serendipity, and how you can, you know, a lot of what we often do with networks, and as we're weaving networks, is, you know, we find the way to serendipitously make these connections between folks that have some sort of shared interests or something upon which to base that connection. And when we're at a distance like this and using, you know, virtual forms of communication, that serendipity is basically impossible. So and I think that also kind of fed into my choice of the word intentional, because you know, I think we just have to, it forces a whole nother layer of thought and strategic engagement and connecting, that, you know, if we're able to just put people in a room together, we wouldn't necessarily have to manage it. It would just happen in many ways, or it would happen, you know, 80% of the way, by the nature of us just bringing them together. And yet, you know, of course, we don't have that at our disposal now. So that's something that I was thinking about as you were all.
Yeah,
Yeah, the serendipity is something that we're struggling with, and in our end of life network, we recently brought on a new staff member to focus solely on network weaving. Before, just two of us were focused on the facilitation, the coordination, and the weaving of the network. And once we started stepping up the work we were doing, because there was less collaboration, we didn't have enough time, it seemed, to actually do the connection. We've just noticed, like in the past month, we've had this new staff member to do just weaving, and you know, this person will call people in between when we convene and sort of connect up people in triads to sort of do more small group work, and really do, yeah, intentional connection between people that she's noticing are, you know, resonating more with each other. So yeah, that's one thing we found really, really helpful, and it's not always possible, you know, due to funding and, you know, yeah, it's taken us a while to get to the point where it could actually afford that person. And I think it's just, it's shot engagement through the roof for that network. So I think it's definitely a
I'm kind of curious about that. That's really interesting to hear. And I'm the only staff member of my network, so I'm doing the weaving and everything else. But about the weaving, do you know sort of what sorts of practices or questions even like she's found to be really helpful in uncovering, you know, things that she can then connect people up to?
I think she's so she attends the convenings, and we've had like a really extensive handover where we've given her a directory and where people sit within the system, like what their interests are, what we've heard from them. And then she'll just sort of schedule like a phone call or a coffee with the people, like virtually, to, you know, discuss what they find they're getting value from in the network. So really like what they're willing to give to the network and what they're getting from the network currently, and how we can sort of up that value proposition for them. So yeah, I think she talks about that. It really helps that she's got a really vested interest in end of life. Like she is a practicing death doula, and she's really, really interested in that space. So she's doing it quite naturally, whereas I come from a space of design and like social sciences. So I'm more of like the background coordinator, and that weaving would be more less intuitive to me, whereas it's quite intuitive for her. But yeah, in terms of questions, it's definitely more around like their interests and their gives and gets to the network that she's finding really helpful.
I tried something recently that I thought was really clever, but it didn't really work the way I tried it, so I'll share it here. I was interested in trying to sort of facilitate a rapid coordination, so people could just share what they needed and others could jump on it in a group setting. We've done this over Zoom before that was okay, where people would say a thing they needed and others would say in the chat if they could help. It was okay, but I think it wasn't framed the best. So like the things that they were asking for were kind of weird and like people couldn't really help. So what I tried this past week was to set up a Padlet using the free tool, so people could put what they were looking for, and then it has a comment feature. And so I was hoping others would comment and say like, I can help you with that. And I think, I created a little bit of time for it while we were all on a Zoom call anyway, but it was towards the end, and it was a Friday afternoon, and I think people were just like, yep, okay. And then encouraged people to keep going afterwards, and it didn't really like catch. People didn't get things, and I don't know if that was like I didn't frame it the greatest, but I am still thinking about like, is there any online version? I mean, we have a Slack workspace that is also meant to sort of be that. But if anybody has any experiences with like, an asynchronous, like almost like a bulletin board, right? Which is like, I'm looking for X, and then somebody else can like pull the thing off and call you. I'd be really interested in that.
Yeah. I'm going to jump in with my former network manager hat. Well, also a little bit of collective mind, a little former network manager. So this morning, this came up, this concept that is both applicable in in-person gatherings as well as virtually. She had called it an ask and offer kind of format. My former hat, we called it give and get. I'm a big fan of alliteration. So the concept is exactly what you're describing, and it speaks to what Lauren is mentioning as this value proposition within the network, not just from the staff out, and how to create more benefit, but how to create mutual benefit. So what are you seeking? What can you offer to other people? What was new when I pre-COVID, so kind of lay virtual tools for networks, we had a platform where we could create forum chats, and so we had a forum specifically devoted to this give and get. It took the in-person experience of it and made it online, and it kind of flowed like a Reddit, and it was somewhat effective. I think that tools have definitely advanced since then, and the suggestion that came up this morning was using Miro, which Seema knows more about. I haven't experienced it as much, but I'm sure it's kind of like Padlet or what you're describing, that it allows different participants to create their own sticky notes, which is exactly how I did it in the past in person, with your name and information, and it's either what your ask or your offer is, and then people are able to take down their sticky notes if they're that concept. So all of that is just to say you're really on the right track with what that idea is, and hopefully there's validation that it works, and maybe it is a matter of kind of tweaking the platform component to it to see. Again, I don't have the experience with the tool, but if I can echo what someone validated this morning, was that Miro was working for them to accomplish that.
I think it was that same person this morning as well who mentioned that where he has had greater success is when he's taken an action and made it into a behavior, something habitual for his members. So whether it's something that, you know, gets put on a calendar on a recurring basis so that it's almost like as organic as attending a weekly team meeting, or whether it's something that's consistently placed on an agenda so people come to expect it. For him, I think what he was trying to emphasize is that when something becomes a habit, that it makes the uptake and the sustainability of it just that much easier. Not a perfect science, but certainly something that he had mentioned. I think in that same conversation of, you know, using collaborative type tools.
One of the things that we haven't quite got it up and running yet, but we're looking at something called Kumu, which some others are probably familiar with that. But we were trying to find a way on our website to allow people to do what you were just, you know, both of you, Rose and Lauren, were saying, like, where maybe I'm looking for something from the network. How do I easily get that information on my own, that I don't have to go through like our organization, for example? Because we see ourselves more as we're building scaffolding right now, and eventually we want, as much as possible, the network to be sort of self-perpetuating. So it looks promising. I mean, we haven't used it yet, but it looks like it could be something visual that people could easily sort of connect with other people, either in their region or around certain interests or around assets, if you want to use that language. I don't know if anybody's used that or had some, or maybe there's something different or better that someone's used, because we are looking for how to kind of have that digital platform that people can go to, whether that's on a website, I guess would be the best for us. But
yeah, I am part of a network, not the one I lead, that has a network map using Kumu. I haven't used it, but I think you're right that it would be a really powerful tool for sort of looking for, yeah, people based on various expertise areas or geographic location. We have a sort of, it's a Google spreadsheet in our network where we actually have organizations programming in, like, each one has a line with various metadata, including the staff member who works on it, their name and their contact info. We call it a census, but it's sort of dual purposes. One is just for like sparking ideas so people can scroll through and see what others are doing, but then of course actually following through and connecting with them. And I haven't gotten to follow up to see how much it's used, but people love it. Like, they talk about it a lot. So that's maybe step one. It was a little bit of work to put together, but basically I seeded it with some ideas and then put it out to them and invited them to add. And it becomes one of those things where it's like, you don't want other organizations' stuff to be in there and not yours. So there was this real like social pressure incentive to add. And I think that's actually worked pretty well.
That's so interesting, Rose, because we've got a Google slideshow of like ideas, but I think it's slightly less usable than like what you're talking about, because the sheet seems like, you know, you can just get into it and you know, it's more rough and ready, and I like that, because I think it's when you're in that scratching phase of ideas, it's much more like people can get into it. Whereas I think when you put something in Google Slides, it's yeah, it seems almost like untouchable. So I'm gonna present that back, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. And the other thing that we've tried to do to facilitate with that is we have a tags as well, so people can kind of say what the keywords are. You can't really sort by them like a database ideally would, because all the tags are in one cell. But you can Control F and like search through that way, which is how, like, I have an instructions page, which is telling people to do that. So I think that helps like people wade through a little more.
Yeah, we've looked into, it's something that's on top of my mind as well, around like connecting people like around convenings, and you know, it's like we've tried to start up Slack, and we've tried to use Miro and all these different tech tools, but in both of our networks, we've got like some older people who have a bit of a tech barrier, and like they kind of talk about like not wanting to learn another tool, which I completely get. It is overwhelming. So as much as possible, we're trying to go low tech, but it really limits us to what we can actually get them on board with. So, and I know it's a process of like just bringing it in slowly. But after a year of Slack, it's really only a few people that use it, and it just like internally at our organization we use it, and it's great. Yeah, we're just finding it hard. So we looked into a couple of other platforms like groups.io, where you can do that tagging and like threading of ideas. But yeah, it's also a little bit of a complicated thing to learn. So we're just trying to find that balance.
I have been at a convening for a different network that I participate in where they did a mini, like they were like, we're going to now create our Slack accounts, and people did it together in real time. And they were like, now we're going to join a channel, and, you know, basically just did those couple of things, but everybody left on the Slack space and like had maybe typed in a message or something. And that Slack workspace, I would say, has more, it's still not a ton of activity, but more people are participating. And so that might have been a key as well.
Thank you, that's great.
I think we found too that we have an older demographic that's going through the training, so it has been a challenge for the tech. And then I think people are just so used to their favorite, whether it's Facebook, like however they're already communicating with either social networks or people, that we've tried Slack. I mean, again, I like Slack, but the uptake wasn't great. And then our organization went to Teams, so now we're using Teams. So we've just got multiple, like, so it's just one of those things, like what works, or can you build on something people are already using? I know, like, we've created a Facebook page, which has probably been the best uptake from people in the network, because a lot of them were already on Facebook, so being part of another Facebook group, and then we just curate it with, well, they can do it as well. Like, so people are just updating that with events and putting some of the requests on there. So we've seen some people, you know, respond to needs. But yeah, again, it's challenging to find that one. I don't know if there's a one size fits all. Probably isn't. So how do you, and again, we're trying to use a website and all this too, and getting people to use forums on a website, and that can be challenging. And internet speeds in rural aren't always the best compared to more urban centers. So there's a lot of tech challenges I'm finding.
Someone this morning, to that point about, you know, all having to use so many different platforms, and then social media being a platform unto itself, and I appreciated the kind of there's a positive connotation to this idea of the resignation to the fact that it just takes multiple platforms. Like we're always looking for this silver bullet, and when that kind of sentiment was expressed, I was just like, you know what? Yep. It takes so much to meet people where they're at. And there are just some hurdles that they're not necessarily knots that are going to be untied. It's just what we have to work with and move through. And knowing your audience, as you say, Tim, knowing that that an older demographic is going to feel more comfortable with what they know and being able to use Facebook, and needing to contend with technology challenges, and what's going to work, what's going to be, you know, fast and flashy and fantastic for a network of you know, fintech people is going to be very different than a you know, aging and end of life kind of group. So it is so important to keep that context in mind, the context of your network.
We had actually started using, on that note, using like a higher logic board. It's just like a really clunky message. Maybe it's like a pretty typical online message forum through the organization that hosts me. And I could barely use it because it didn't thread, and it was just like junk all over the place. And so we also switched, and I switched to Slack because everybody told me that's where they were at. I don't know that it's true, but that is what I was told. So yeah, we tried one because so many associations have those kind of clunky forums, apparently they were comfortable with them, but they still didn't use it. So that was interesting. I'm not sure how successful Slack will be ultimately, but we're gonna try.
I'm noticing, and so my question, I guess, that I'm hearing, like, some of you're in paid positions actually overseeing or running or weaving or whatever, convening the network. So we're trying to wrestle with too, like, is this something, I'm sure it's done multiple ways with different forms of success. Can networks actually be ongoing, evergreen with volunteers running them, or really does there have to be, you know, some key people that are somehow paid by some funding to be sort of that weaver, or just the admin person, or whatever role I guess you've given them, is a question that we're also thinking through. So I don't know if anybody's had similar journeys or questions.
Absolutely. Because I'm from an organization called the Australian Centre for Social Innovation. And we've been given some philanthropic funding to start these networks because they're big social issues here and in the rest of the world. But the funding is always finite. You know, it's always going to run out. And in one or two, in one of the networks, we're trying to think about how we transition to a more self-sustaining network. But we're finding there's a lot of pushback from the members because they see us as sort of neutral facilitation or doing sort of the background admin work. So really the question we're asking ourselves is, you know, what, if anything, can we dilute and distribute? What are those things that the network might already have the skills for and that we can sort of softly hand over? And yeah, I guess dilute our involvement down until it's very, very cost efficient, I guess. But I think maybe in the stages where we're at with those networks, they need a little bit more, and maybe down the track they'll need less. So we're just, I guess, trying to set it up now so it happens maybe in that transition time. But yeah, definitely feeling that question as well.
I also wonder if, you know, an important variable in that is whether the network is like truly decentralized, or whether there's some level of leadership, even if it's not paid. Because I'm thinking about some groups that I'm part of that I wouldn't call a network, that everybody's volunteer in, but do have a sort of, you know, kind hierarchy, if that's a thing. And that seems very common, actually, right? All volunteer groups that do a lot of different things. If I think about like advocacy groups or social movements, but they're not entirely decentralized. So I wonder if that's a key difference.
I'm going to make a small plug that I'll bring up later, but we actually have our next community conversation is about decentralizing networks and kind of digging into that theme. So, and it's co-hosted by a colleague of ours from a network called Child Helpline International. So that'll be a topic that we come to, but it is a great point, Rose. With our short time left, unless there's more kind of thoughts to churn on down this vein, I was interested to throw kind of a different kind of question out there, because there's been this has been very rich, and we'll capture all of this. And you can see there's some of the tools referenced in the chat. I don't know if maybe Rose, you had mentioned another tool as well that that we could share. But I love the you know, it seems like along with these innovations that are being developed to benefit the network, it also is kind of twinned with new kinds of best practices for managing networks. But if there are other kinds of best practices that maybe aren't as tech bound, sorry, there's a fruit fly in my face, best practices that maybe aren't tech bound that have kind of emerged for you as your go-tos during this time, whether it's in the ways that you're administering and coordinating the network, or if it's really just about kind of to Tim's question, how to be there for your network in this time, or how you're supporting them and being there for each other. And another little twist to that, if there's, it could also be maybe if there's a personal skill or strength that you've had to call on a lot that you think has been also a useful component.
I'll share one thing that I think has been working quite well for us lately, which is that I've started holding monthly learning exchanges, and I plan them in partnership with one member of the network. So I'm finding that when I can partner with somebody, they will, step up and really be engaged. It's as soon as we have a larger group doing something that everybody's kind of not responsible anymore. And what has worked, I think, for the learning exchanges are basically we pick a topic that people want to discuss. It's often pandemic induced, I guess. So this week is, since we do science engagement and communication, what virtual engagement looks like with many of these groups that often, meet with, say, school kids or something and do demos. Obviously, it's off the table. So we do the first 15 minutes of the hour are just small group breakouts with an optional prompt. And I didn't think people would like this, but they really like that, just getting to know each other and what everybody's working on. Then we have a panel do the 30-minute sort of talk about the topic. And I think it's nice that people are then able to hear from 4 different groups that are part of our association. And they all just have, a few insights to share. We do, we have question and answer, and then the last 15 minutes are back to breakout. So we actually it's only 30 minutes of planned content, and since it's a panel, it's pretty minimal. But I found that good in terms of our attendance is strong, and also informally I've gotten feedback that it's been good. And for me, the lift has been pretty light actually because of partnering with teammates. So that's something that's helped. And that's definitely new, pandemic new.
And did you say, I forgot if you said how often, Rose, you're doing it? Is that?
Yeah, we're doing it once a month.
Okay.
Rose, how are you gathering the topics everyone wants? Is it just sort of informally through Slack or?
So we do have a working group who kind of meets as needed, basically, to discuss upcoming events of this type. And then I often try to come with a few ideas myself, just based on conversations I've heard, and pose them to the group, and they kind of make the decision. But then also when I ask for regular feedback in more formal ways, I've been asking what people want to learn about. So trying to pull that together too.
Cool, thanks. I think I can, there was a best practice on a similar vein where we were starting to weave what people's skills and expertise are in the network. And one of our network members has high skill in partnerships and managing partnerships. So to your point, Rose, of that monthly learning, finding the skills and expertise in the group and actually running it with the member actually helped it be a bit more self-organizing. So it kind of links up with those couple of points we've been talking about. And there was really good reviews from that session. It was something that everyone wanted to learn, and it was really relevant for the work we were doing together, moving into generating ideas and brokering partnerships. So yeah, a bit of serendipity as well, sort of coming together. I think in terms of that question you asked, Emily, around personal skills or strengths, I think I've definitely learned a lot about myself just sitting with uncertainty and just not knowing what's going to happen next, and just really starting to get comfortable with what's emerging. And it's definitely, I don't know if it ever will be comfortable, but it's easier to sit with it now, especially with the pandemic and all that.
I fully agree with that, Lauren. That really resonates. Thank you for sharing that.
And how pointed that your word, Lauren, was emergent. That's your theme.
Exactly. Circular.
Anything else in terms of strategies, or really as we're kind of coming to a close in the next few minutes, any other thoughts, questions on this topic, or you know, anything that else from this small group?
It was just interesting to hear, because I think both you and Rose, or Rose and Lauren, you're a little bit probably further ahead with what you're doing with your networks. And so, I mean, we've been talking recently about just this whole idea of huddles around, I mean, it might be topics, or it might just be people who maybe have an interest in an aspect of network development that maybe the people actually within the network can begin to do a bit more of designing of things as they're working together. So we're going to test some of that out. Like we're just kind of the meetings that we've got coming up over the next 2 weeks with the larger regional groups. Hopefully we'll spawn some of those smaller huddle around some of the, we're going to do a bit of polling through Zoom in those meetings just to get a bit of a feel for where people are coming and how they're seeing the network and what they're hoping to get from the network. We're struggling too, though, just because one of our, I mean, it's all about strengths-based and asset-based language. And so finding, though, that it's still very much, you know, what do I get out of this by being a part of the network? And so how do we kind of keep both people happy, like promoting it so that, yes, there is some value of being part of this, and this is kind of what you quote unquote get out of it, but more of, you know, almost an exchange concept where we're all exchanging our gifts, assets, and skills with each other for the good of the whole network as we try to, you know, really change a system, a large system in our province. So it's, yeah, it's, so thank you for sharing some of those examples of your journey, because it's really helpful just to hear that other people are going through some similar things. So
I just wanted to pick up on the comment you made about the what do I get out of this, which is like so understandably human and so frustrating at the same time, when it's like I'm breaking my back to give you things out of this. But I definitely with that, and both sides of it, to be completely honest. So I understand where it's coming from, but it is frustrating.
Yeah, it really lands home, that one. I think when you're doing the work behind the scenes, it's super frustrating. But like, yeah, in those early stages of networks, which I still consider that I'm definitely in and learning along the way, it is a bit of like more showing, and just making sure it's visible. You know, that there's value in it, and for people to keep coming. But I definitely want to express like gratitude to all of you for sharing stories, because I feel like, yeah, we've been in a space where it's sort of that churning kind of feeling where you're just kind of in your own head, you know, same ideas coming up, and it's super helpful to be able to connect with like a community of practice and just discuss what's going on out there. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you all. Especially collective mind for setting this up for us.
Thanks to tell you all about the upcoming opportunities to be connecting more. But we obviously hold the same feelings and sentiments. We're really grateful for how candidly and presently and willingly you've showed up today to be supporting each other and sharing your experiences and that even we're learning, listening to you. And it's one broader takeaway that I've gleaned from both this morning and this session is there are so many different types of networks that are part of this community, and there are so many experiences that are shared and in common, and those frustrations and the the little tricks and tactics. So it's quite reassuring, at least, to know that no one's alone in this, and we're really happy to be able to provide this space to remember that. So some upcoming future opportunities with our learning community for Collective Mind. Next week, I think these are all on Wednesdays, we have our Networks 101 session. If you haven't participated in that before, it's learning about what networks are, what they need at their core to be effective and impactful. The following week, we have a brand new offering. This is Network Management 101. It's the beginning of a new kind of series of offerings that we'll be rolling out, talking about skills and practices for network management. Our next community conversation, as I mentioned earlier, is about network decentralization, and that's hosted by a member of the learning community. And if you have any topics that you would like to host and share with other members of the learning community, please reach out. We'd love to partner with you. And as Rose said, yeah, hearing how the huddles go and to, staying connected. So please, if you're not signed up for our hopefully you're all signed up for our newsletter, but that's how to continue to find out. We're also on LinkedIn. And it's been a real pleasure. Thank you all so much. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks again.
Thank you so much,
Nice meeting everyone. Have a great day.
Everybody.
Lovely to meet you. See you next time.
Bye.
See you soon.